Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Katherine Seltner in our Washington, D.C. studio. It is good to have you here with us. Pro-lifers praise parts of President Trump's proposed budget released this week. The plan prevents federal funds from going to the nation's largest abortion chain, Planned Parenthood. If passed, it would reportedly be the first budget in U.S. history to do that. Community health centers would receive $422 million in increased federal funding. Other pro-life highlights from the budget proposal include the Adderholt Amendment, which bans the use of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, funds to pay for abortion for detained women. The proposed budget also prevents federal funding for Washington, D.C.'s assisted suicide program. The budget proposal comes as more Planned Parenthood clinics are rapidly closing throughout the nation. The U.S. will soon have 2 states without any Planned Parenthood facilities. Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains announced it's closing 6 facilities in Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico because of financial concerns. That means come late July, Wyoming and North Dakota will be the first 2 states in the U.S. without any Planned Parenthood facilities. Planned Parenthood Heartland also announced plans to close 4 of its Iowa facilities because of recent pro-life laws. Joining us now is Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony List. Marjorie, good to have you here.
Great to be here as always.
So first off, what does this proposed budget mean for the pro-life efforts in defunding Planned Parenthood? Put some context to this.
It's really important. It doesn't have legislative impact immediately. What it says is the Trump and Pence administration believe these things ought to be. And so it's a communication to Capitol Hill, the House and Senate, the leaders there, that this is what they would like to see in a budget bill. So it really does make a difference because then they won't be surprised if there are arguments back and forth from the Hill to the White House about what they would like to see.
Okay, but those pro-life efforts still need to continue the health care
bill. Oh, without question. It's great news. I mean, to hear that, it means it's clarifying once again about what this administration stands for, but it really is more of a symbolic move than anything else.
And other uplifting pro-life news, 10 Planned Parenthood clinics closing throughout the nation. What does this tell us about their business model?
Look, every time we pick up the paper, there are a whole clump of Planned Parenthoods that are closing, and it's crumbling. I mean, the center does not hold for this business model that is abortion-centered. As they're getting, increased funding last year, they're still closing centers. So we haven't even taken away the funds that we intend to take, which is about $500 million. And so when that happens, it's hard to see how that business is going to maintain itself. And I think this is a market-driven failure. The services that they provide are not what women need.
Town Hall had a piece saying these clinics are closing because women are not getting the quality of care that they're looking for. What do we know about the patient experience at a Planned Parenthood clinic, and how does that compare to that of a community health center?
Well, I think what's happened is that the PR machine has weakened because the truth has really come out, and that women's actual experiences now are affirmed and sort of now being communicated. So if you go in and you have osteoporosis, which is mainly affects women, bone density issues, if you go in with diabetes, if you go in with breast cancer and you really need treatment, you cannot get it there. What you can get is contraception, you can get an abortion, a handful of other things of screenings, but it is not a comprehensive health care for women. It simply is not. And when you keep getting directed towards community health centers instead of a Planned Parenthood, then perhaps at some point you're gonna decide, well, if I'm really gonna go to get the care that I need, I'll go somewhere else. The other thing is the desire that we've had in the pro-life movement for so many years to have coverage of what happens when there are failed abortions or just botched procedures where ambulance have to take women away from the Planned Parenthood to get care, aftercare for a terrible situation, which they can't provide. So that's coming out as well. I mean, honestly, when you look at it, it makes sense.
Couldn't Planned Parenthood and the Planned Parenthood PR machine take all these closings and say, see, we do need federal funding more than ever? And what would your response to that be?
It'd be don't throw good money after bad. If you want a good investment, you shift all that money over to the community health centers that have far more comprehensive care. There are a multitude of them. That's an average of 20 to 1 nationally in terms of community health centers to Planned Parenthoods. They're accessible, they're comprehensive. Put the money where it makes some sense. And then women will really get what they deserve. And enough of the shoving the PR machine down our throats. And frankly, we should be satisfied that the market has decided that these Planned Parenthood should be closing.
Marjorie Dannenfelser, you'll stick around for another discussion later in this show.
Amen.
Thank you. The healthcare bill passed by the U.S. House of Representatives earlier this month has two important pro-life protections. First, it stops our tax dollars from going to health insurance plans that cover abortion. And second, it defunds Planned Parenthood of nearly $500 million of our tax dollars. But these pro-life protections are under attack by Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. That's why it is so urgent. Pro-life voices are heard loud and clear. Both of your U.S. senators need to hear from you right now. Here is this week's call to action. Pull out your smartphone or go to your computer right now and type into your web browser prolifeweekly.com. You'll see a place to type in your name, email address, and zip code. Once you type in that information, you'll click Add My Name. That's it. It's that simple. If you take this action, you will add your name to the petition that tells the U.S. Senate to stop using our tax dollars for abortion in the healthcare bill. Make sure your voice is heard on behalf of the unborn. Once again, go to prolifeweekly.com and share this call to action with your friends and neighbors. We'll return to the topic of defunding Planned Parenthood, but for now, we turn to more news. And a sure sign the pro-life movement is an international one. The March for Life was held across 3 nations this past weekend. Pro-lifers marched in the United Kingdom, Croatia, and Italy. Despite rain and protesters, there were reportedly thousands of pro-lifers who marched in the UK. Saturday's event in Croatia also reportedly drew thousands in a country that's nearly 90% Roman Catholic. And Italy hosted its 7th March for Life in Rome. Pope Francis gave his apostolic blessing to participants in the pro-life event. Speaking of Pope Francis, the Holy Father says no research justifies the use of human embryos. The bold pro-life comments came during a Vatican meeting last week with people affected by Huntington's disease, a rare and incurable genetic brain disorder. It's not the first time Pope Francis has spoken out against embryonic stem cell research. He also addressed it in his 2015 papal letter, Laudato Si'. More than 40 members of Congress asked President Trump to appoint a pro-life director to the National Institutes of Health. The current director, Francis Collins, supports embryonic stem cell research and human cloning. In a letter sent to President Trump this week, the congressman wrote, "The protection of human life and defense of the most vulnerable of our citizens are one of the nation's most fundamental values, and Dr. Collins' controversial research positions run counter to the pro-life principles of our founding fathers." We go back now to our top story about the rapid closing of Planned Parenthood clinics across the United States and the legislative efforts to defund the abortion giant through the healthcare bill. Joining us now from Capitol Hill is Representative Vicki Hartzler of Missouri. Congresswoman, thank you for your time.
Oh, absolutely. You're welcome.
Planned Parenthood announced recently they will be closing 10 abortion clinics across the nation. What's your reaction to this news?
Well, I think it's good news. It's good news for women. There are other healthcare clinics where women can get services that don't provide abortion. And so I think that's a good move.
Throughout 2016, Congresswoman, you served on the select congressional panel that was investigating Planned Parenthood. In your opinion, what was the biggest finding? What was the biggest takeaway Americans should know about Planned Parenthood?
Well, it is complicit in the buying and selling of baby body parts. They coordinate with the companies who procure the tissue for research and allow the technician to actually be embedded in their clinics. And in so doing, they not only are complicit in selling the body parts, but they also violate women's privacy rights. We learned the way that this is done is that an order comes in from the research company online, similar to an Amazon.com site, where they order the different body part as well as the gestation of the baby and the age of the baby. Those orders come to the procurement company technician that's embedded in the Planned Parenthood clinic. They look over the order and then they match it up with the Planned Parenthood's medical records of the women in the waiting room to determine which women might have a baby about to be aborted that fits the order. Then they go out and befriend that woman and get them to sign the consent by lying to them, telling them that their donation will result in cures for things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and cancer, which of course we know there have been no cures for those diseases. And then they stay with the woman during the abortion procedure, take the baby body parts, and very coldly and calculatingly they divide up the parts that match the order and ship them off to the procurement company. It is just abhorrent, and I think most people didn't even know this was occurring. So I'm glad we were able to shed the light on it and hopefully stop this process, and in so doing not only protect babies' lives but protect women who are victims of this process for profit for Planned Parenthood and the procurement companies.
This investigation that you took part in and the undercover Planned Parenthood videos really stirred more conversation about defunding Planned Parenthood. So as the Senate now debates the health care bill, how important to you are the pro-life protections, and would you vote for a health care bill that did not defund Planned Parenthood and have high protection?
No, I mean, there's no reason for us to continue to fund these abortion agencies, and that's why in the House we passed the bill that says we have the same amount of money going to women across this country for their health care, but it's going to be directed to agencies and to healthcare clinics that do not provide abortion. And so I'm hoping that the Senate will agree with this, because not only is it the right thing to do, it's what the vast majority of Americans want. There's been surveys done, even of people, whether you're pro-choice or pro-life. There's a large consensus that says we don't want our tax dollars going to pay for this or to support agencies that do provide abortion. And so it just makes sense. It's the right thing to do, and hopefully the Senate will come up with a health care bill that provides those protections as well.
Finally, Congresswoman, you previously taught high school. How did you see the abortion culture impacting those young women today, and has that played a role in your pro-life views?
Well, it was sad to see several high school students that I used to teach sadly turn to abortion. Some were coerced, some just, I don't think, had the facts. But when they did have the facts, they chose life. And that's where I think it's important that we share with people that a baby's heart starts beating at about 3 weeks of age, and show those pictures. I know one student who was considering abortion, and once they saw those pictures, they said, well, that's not a blob of tissue, that's a baby. And they had gone to Planned Parenthood and asked, what does my baby look like now? And it was about 4 weeks along, and the technician just had said, well, it's just a blob of tissue. But once they saw that picture, they said, that's a baby. And so we need to get the facts out to people, and I believe that once they have the facts, they will choose life. We also need to support our crisis pregnancy centers that I know many pro-life people do all across this country, to reach out and help these women in very vulnerable a time in their life when maybe those around them are encouraging abortions. We need to come alongside them and say, hey, we're going to walk through this process with you. We're going to help you and support you. And so there's many things that we can do to help ensure life occurs in this country and abortion ends.
A reminder to always speak the truth. Representative Vicki Hartzler of Missouri, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
The health care bill passed by the U.S. House of Representatives earlier this month still has some hurdles it needs to get through before becoming law. And in that process, the pro-life protections could be stripped out. To discuss the ins and outs of the health care debate and what it means for the pro-life movement, we're joined by this week's expert panel. John McCormick is senior writer at the Weekly Standard, and Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony List, joins us again. Good to have you both.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
John, from what you are hearing, how likely is it that the Senate will keep the pro-life protections that are in the House's version of the health care bill?
Well, no one really knows for sure, but one real expert that I talked to, a former senior Senate staffer, said it was, quote, a very close call. The rules are sort of arcane, but there is this debate about what can or can't go through with 51 votes as opposed to the usual 60 that it requires in the Senate. And we won't really know for sure until the Senate parliamentarian adjudicates and both sides get to argue before this parliamentarian make their case about whether this should or should not make it through. There is some hope in that defunding Planned Parenthood a couple of years ago, a lot of conservatives, even the Heritage Foundation, said you couldn't do that. Turned out you could. They passed the bill. Pro-life groups like Susan B. Anthony's worked on that, and they passed that bill. They proved that you could do that. And so the goal of pro-lifers here, the hope is that you can analogize defunding Planned Parenthood to the issues related to the Hyde Amendment and healthcare subsidies.
And Marjorie, you said you would oppose any version of the health care bill that did not include these pro-life protections, and that an executive action would not be a sufficient substitute. Why is that?
Well, this is when it all gets really tricky. We've been through this before. John tracked this in 2010 very closely when we were looking at a health care bill that did not protect taxpayers from taxpayer funding of abortion. And we had a whole group of Democrats that said, yeah, we agree with you, we're pro-life. And then at the very last minute, they changed their mind. And they allowed this health care bill, the one that we're under now, to go through with us footing the bill for abortion. We cannot allow that to happen again. As much as we want to defund Planned Parenthood, the far higher impact piece of this legislation is the cash going to plans that would fund abortion. So as much as we would hate it, we would have to oppose it. We think actually that language will stay in. We've argued very strongly, and our allies in the House and the Senate have argued very strongly to the parliamentarian and the Congressional Budget Office that this has a big budgetary impact, therefore it should stay in the reconciliation bill. Therefore, we will be thrilled to make sure that this thing's passed with 51 votes.
So we've mentioned the parliamentarian, we've mentioned the reconciliation process. John, can you give a brief rundown as to what that is and why it's going through this route?
Well, so in the Senate for a long time now, most bills are subject to a filibuster in the last generation or so. That means that 41 or more senators can block basically any bill they want. They've created this reconciliation vehicle. It's called budget reconciliation. The idea was that if you follow these certain rules, you could pass a legislation with a simple majority, 51 votes, and it's designed to reduce the deficit, to help with the budget. So this bill, you know, as it relates to health care, that's why they chose this, because they've got 52 Republicans in the Senate. So you've got a very narrow margin for victory right there, very narrow margin for error. You know, when the Democrats passed this bill back in 2009, the first time in the Senate, they had 60 votes for it. They ultimately, the House went back, the Democratic House passed that bill, and then they used this reconciliation procedure themselves to make a few modifications to it. But there are these complicated, arcane rules that govern what can and can't go through, and so that explains some of the reason why the Democratic Obamacare bill was a little messed up, and it explains also why the Republican replacement, you know, isn't exactly what anyone would really like.
It is complicated. Do we know how likely it is the Hyde Amendment, which bans federal funds from paying for abortions, can get through this process?
Well, I think we both probably have similar information. I don't think anybody but God knows what's going to happen in a couple of weeks when that really gets adjudicated by the parliamentarian. But I do think that we have a great argument. What matters is that it has a budgetary impact. That is the standard, and it does have a budgetary impact, certainly in the beginning year, and a little bit less of a budgetary impact in outgoing years. But think about what we're talking about. We're talking about the budgetary impact of our paying for the deaths of children. So it really matters that we win this argument, and we're doing everything we can to make it happen.
When the House passed their version of the health care bill, there was a lot of buzz about pre-existing conditions. John, how does the coverage for pre-existing conditions in this health care bill compare to that in Obamacare?
Well, basically what it does is it sort of keeps Obamacare's regulations for pre-existing conditions for people who already have health insurance. The question is really what would happen in certain states that requested waivers and exemptions to do some things different from Obamacare for people going forward who try and get coverage, and whether or not how much you could change how much you're charging people for coverage. You don't have it right now. And so the whole idea here is that, you know, you want to help people with pre-existing conditions, but also it's a problem right now. We have the way we've structured Obamacare is we've basically decided that the way we're going to help out people with pre-existing conditions is we're going to charge them the exact same as everybody who's healthy, and we're basically going to do that by raising the rates of people who are in the individual market. So people who don't happen to have employer insurance, which doesn't seem very fair. You know, that's a real hit in the pocketbook to people who are, you know, middle class and paying thousands and thousands of dollars extra. So, I mean, I think we basically have all decided as a society, as a people, it seems like there's this consensus we're going to help people out with pre-existing conditions, and so that's why the Republican health care bill it has this idea of high-risk pools where we'll have government subsidies that can help out people with pre-existing conditions. I think that makes sense, and I think there are other ways that states could experiment with making sure that people with pre-existing conditions are covered, but perhaps not exactly the way Obamacare went about it.
And Marjorie, how do you respond then to critics who say you can't be pro-life and support a health care bill that has this different approach to pre-existing conditions?
Well, I think John just revealed how complicated this argument is. There are prudential judgments involved in caring for the poor, in high-risk pools, and who pays for it, and what can the market bear? What is the government's responsibility? Which means what is our responsibility to the poor? But one thing is for sure is that the fundamental right to life is the first right. Without the right to life, you can't enjoy health care later. So while there's a prudential judgment on the side of how we make sure that people who have diabetes or other pre-existing conditions get taken care of, we certainly have consensus, and we certainly owe it to the unborn child who needs that guaranteed right to life. It's simply, I think, just wrong to say that it's not pro-life, that this is not a pro-life bill if it doesn't satisfy a bar that someone says is adequate for pre-existing conditions.
Healthcare is a long and complicated process. Grateful for both of your insights. John McCormick, Marjorie Dannenfelser, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back, we speak out against a TV show that made a major plug for Planned Parenthood, and to introduce you to a singer using her voice for the pro-life movement. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Seltner. Now for our Speak Out segment. Another week, another example of celebrities trying to normalize Planned Parenthood's abortion business. The CBS TV sitcom Mom announces they are donating $250,000 to Planned Parenthood instead of using that money for an Emmy campaign. In an interview on CBS this morning, the show star Allison Janney said, "When we discussed with Warner Brothers what our Emmy campaign might be, I blurted out, let's give the money to Planned Parenthood, and they took me seriously." No surprise, the abortion giant is celebrating the decision. Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards tweeting out, "Just in case anyone needed yet another reason why Allison Janney is amazing, thank you, Allison and Mom." Individuals have the right to donate their personal money to the group of their choice. I get that. But for a TV show to support Planned Parenthood is perplexing for a few reasons. It alienates a pro-life audience, endorses a brand that is scandal-ridden, and it sends a message that runs counter to its own. The TV show Mom is about motherhood. Planned Parenthood does not support motherhood. Planned Parenthood, by promoting abortion, sends the message to women they would be better off taking the life of their own child than embracing motherhood. Now let's talk about that monetary donation. Planned Parenthood just received $250,000. $250,000. If celebrities are willing to pour their cash into Planned Parenthood, why should all Americans be forced to do the same? Isn't this another reason why our tax dollars shouldn't have to touch the abortion giant? So while this donation just feeds into Planned Parenthood's propaganda machine, it's also another sign that the time has come for Planned Parenthood to be defunded. Remember, there is something you can do to counter today's culture of death by following this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com, add your name to a petition that tells our U.S. senators to stop using our tax dollars for abortion. And of course, you can always pray anytime and anywhere. Together with our call to action and with prayer, we can make a difference in our culture. First, she was a singer. Then, she was a volunteer at a pro-life pregnancy center. Now, she is putting her two passions together to stand for life. For this week's Pro-Life Focus, meet the woman using her voice for the voiceless.
I'm Joyce M. Bartholomew, and welcome to my channel.
Joyce M. Bartholomew is a professional Christian singer and songwriter.
You need to know you're good enough.
She's been singing most of her life, but a few years ago, Bartholomew says she felt called to volunteer at a pro-life pregnancy care center.
I saw people coming in very scared and broken and stressed out. And so they were going to make a decision to just get rid of the problem immediately. And so sometimes they stumbled into the center thinking they were coming into a Planned Parenthood type of place, not knowing that it was, thank God, it was a pro-life center.
After working with women in unexpected pregnancies, Bartholomew was inspired to write the song, What Was Your Name?
What was your name? What were you meant to be? Wish I could have known you.
It tells the story of a girl who aborts her baby because of pressure from a boyfriend. With the help of an older woman, the girl is guided towards a path of post-abortive healing. The music video started picking up online attention in pro-life circles before it was suddenly pulled down. You wrote a pro-life song called What Was Your Name, uploaded that music video onto YouTube, started getting more and more views, and then it was pulled down.
Yes.
What happened there?
Around 2013, we put up the music video. And I wrote the song before, and then we did the music video, shot it in LA. We put it up, and we just put it to an email list of pro-lifers. And so the pro-lifers, of course, like it. So at 32,000 views, it went from 32,000 to about 55,000 in a 24-hour time frame. And YouTube said, oh no, it's bots. Nobody wants to watch a pro-life music video. And they just pulled it off and accused me of doing something illegal.
Bartholomew thinks YouTube has a bias against pro-lifers, and her legal team has filed a complaint for defamation. The case is ongoing. Despite the bumps in the road, Bartholomew says she won't quiet her pro-life voice because music has the ability to reach so many lives and maybe even save some.
I really believe that it is the music, it's spiritual, it's supernatural, it's something beyond me. I really believe it because I don't think it's, oh, it's me doing, I don't. I really believe it's, and I always ask for it, his inspiration, his power, and music is so powerful.
Wish I could have known you.
That's it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. You can reach us anytime with questions, ideas, comments at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com. I look forward to seeing you here again next week. Life is a gift. God bless.